Everyone seems to be talking about inflation these days, but what is it and what do you need to know about inflation? Well, here to talk with me about this is Beau Kemp from Sensible Money. Beau, welcome.
Thank you, Bob, for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Beau, and it will be a pleasure to have you walk us through this topic. Where to begin?
Yeah, the first step is I keep reading about inflation, and it's all in the headlines right now. Then whatever news channel you watch, or even on my iPhone, it'll pop up on a notification from. So the news articles that really are harping on inflation is getting out of control. The Fed's behind the curve. We need to start increasing interest rates. And I think there's so much information that gets thrown our way that it can get really muddy and it's tricky. And I don't like the word exaggerated, but we have to really understand what that rate is that they're telling us to incorporate it into our own either opinions or how we go to build our portfolio from there.
Yeah. So it's always a good place to start with a definition of what inflation is.
Yeah, basic econ 101 that we all probably went through either in high school or a college course that you had to go through. Prices are going up. Everyone seems to notice it. It's a talking point right now. And a lot of times the reference point that you see in the metric is CPI. And that's really what the headlines are talking about is CPI is 6, 7%, whatever it is. It's hard to keep track of these days, right? So everything's so volatile and so much data getting thrown our way. But when you really dig into this and you try to figure out the point of these headlines are, oh, the Fed needs to do this, the Fed needs to do this. What is it that is driving the Fed to make their decision? And so that's where we have to dig into. And the Fed will oftentimes look at core inflation, which core inflation, they take the CPI and they subtract out food and energy. And at first, when I really started digging into this, I'm like, that doesn't make any sense to me as the consumer, because that's where I spend my money. Like I go to the grocery store every week, I pay my energy bills. As you start digging into it, you realize that this is really a big team approach in terms of monetary and fiscal policy. And so the government has their job to do, and that's along regulation. They can affect the economy with taxes and things like that. And so that's really coming into play a lot in terms of, there's shipping challenges still. We've been through a pandemic the past 2 years now, and there's still places shut down. There's certain places that are open up completely, and even across borders gets even trickier. And so that's the regulation side that, the governments are in handcuffs pretty much at the current moment. But when we keep talking about the Fed needs to increase interest rates, well, their job is to look at, if I'm the Fed chairman, I'm thinking, if I increase interest rates, what is actually going to be affected by that? And so that's why they take out food and energy, because the food is, you have the shipping challenges. There's also climate. We can't control the weather. And they can't really control the energy prices as well. And so that's that main basic piece of, all right, let's kind of zero in on this core inflation.
So what do we need to know about core inflation at the moment then?
Yeah, so last data point I've seen was core inflation was sitting right around 6%. I'll use round numbers, makes this a lot easier. And so from there, you see, even you get a headline thrown your way that says 6% core inflation. That's pretty high, because we're used to seeing an inflation rate that's around 2%, sometimes less, sometimes a little more. And so from there, what you have to do is you have to look at excess inflation. And I'll give credit where credit's due. Mark Meldrum, he is a professor based out of Canada, but he's a professor to help CFA students. And so every week he has this applied market series. He takes the info you learn in the course and he applies it to real world data, because it obviously sticks a lot better for people. And so what he did was he took what inflation was from 2015 to 2020, right before the pandemic started. And so if you think about like a graph, he drew this line, the slope of that line was 2%, pretty much. So like we are slowly increasing inflation at 2%. And that's the line where that was never a talking point. a really calm and steady inflation rate that everyone was comfortable with because it's right around that target that the Fed has. And then from there, he says, what exactly happened when the pandemic hit to where we're at now to cause this 6% number that we're seeing? Well, he zeroed in on 2020 to 2021. So if you think about that line, he took that line, he extended it out. So we have that nice 2% line. From 2020 to 2021, our inflation metric actually was dipped under. And so inflation was lagging behind where it was technically supposed to be, according to this nice steady 20 rate that we had from 2015 to 2020. And so technically we could have been saying we need more inflation. No one really says that ever, to say, like, not many people want prices to go up, but we were behind our kind of base metric. And so now that we know we were kind of behind, a year later, we're 6% above where we were a year ago. But that doesn't necessarily mean we're 6% above where we thought we would be starting in 2015. So after some more math and statistical analysis that he did, really he came out to say, we have an excess inflation of 3%. And so, yeah, it's still high. Like, it's still more than what we want, but what is it like? What does that mean for us, and how do we approach it from here? That's the metric we want to watch. So if this 3% continues to increase and get out of control, that's when you are going to be saying you're probably in the camp of a higher interest rate hike. So a lot of times you'll see the 25 basis points or 50 basis points, whatever the Fed does next. That's what will drive that decision. If that excess inflation rate starts to kind of come back on our graph, starts to come back to where we thought we would be, if we continued on that steady line, they'll still make their adjustments, but it probably doesn't have to be as aggressive because they feel like they're going to get control over this. So it's like you take this 6% number that gets thrown our way and fed through us, you look at it and you say, okay, what does it actually mean, and what's the problem? The problem is that excess inflation of where we thought we should have been 7 years ago.
Certainly a novel approach to inflation, one that I've not heard about in the past. So what do you conclude from what can we conclude from all this?
I think really what it is just a lot of people want to have their opinion and they want to be educated on everything going on and being talked about in the news and in the market. And so I think in order to gather this opinion, you have to really understand what those numbers are that you're talking about. And so when we get this data, it's what does this actually mean to us? How much is it kind of the marketing of the news channels? They have to market their articles and their videos. It's part of the business. No one blames them for it. But now what does it mean for us? And so from there, we can kind of take this and start to piece together, if you're really trying to dig into how to build your portfolio, what you think are going to happen with interest rates and things like that, you have to understand the cause of all of it, which the cause of most of it is the inflation. And then the effect will be how the yield curve will either shift, whether it's a flattening of the yield curve, whatever it is. But we really have to understand the cause first.
Right, Beau, I think we covered a lot of ground. Anything we missed?
No, I think that's it.
All right. Well, I want to thank you as always for sharing your knowledge and wisdom with our readers and viewers. It's greatly appreciated.
Yeah, thank you for having me.